Hi everybody, it's Jenn from Creeth. It is April 20th, 2021. We lost Rusty Young, founding member of my favorite band, Poco, to a heart attack about a week ago. I have a lot of stories about my time following this band all over North America for, I guess it was 4 or 5 years. I want to tell the stories. I want to share the souvenirs and everything along the way. I'm just so overwhelmed though. Brings back a lot of memories. Poco, of course, became a band in 1968 when the Buffalo Springfield packed it in, and Neil Young went one way and Stephen Stills joined him eventually for Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. Richie Furay, Jim Messina said, "Hey, why don't we put together a band? We got this Rusty Young guy that we just had in playing a song for us on steel guitar, and Rusty's got a drummer friend, and we'll see if we can find a bass player." And off they went. Ended up at the Troubadour. And Poco fought long and hard for years to try to make country and rock mixed together. It's kind of a new concept. And they weren't initially hugely successful. They had some minor hits, but the biggest contribution to the music industry is just that pioneer, trailblazer. Other musicians would pick up Poco records, listen to them and say, "I want to make a band just like that." And so exploded country rock, California country rock. One by one, members of the band, Poco, left to try other projects, do other things. Some of them had some tremendous success, some of them not so much. But one of them stuck around for the whole 50 plus years of the band. They even retired the band and brought it back a couple times because Rusty Young, who initially was just a steel guitar player, eventually became the leader of the band, the lead singer, the lead songwriter, played a lot of guitar, played mandolin. The guy did it all. And my discovery of Poco was kind of in reverse. I grew up in the 80s. Born in the 70s, grew up in the 80s, but ignored pop culture in the 80s. And it wasn't until the 90s when I started listening to the radio every day at a job I had. They were playing this band called the Eagles, who apparently were old fossils from the 70s who were making a comeback. And I know there's always been a rivalry between the Eagles and Poco because, well, one made it big and one not so much. Poco was here first. The Eagles stole our bass player, and then they stole our idea, and they got all these hits. But hearing the Eagles on the radio really got me into country rock. And eventually I branched off and realized, okay, these Eagles, they've put out these great records. This reunion tour is really cool. I went and saw it. First time I actually went to a concert that I actually wanted to go to. I'd been dragged to concerts in the past, but yeah. So I hit the, did we have the internet in 96? I did my research somehow. Learned about all these different guys in the Eagles who all had solo careers, and a lot of them had come from other bands. So I was on a mission to find all these different recordings, and I found the solo CDs, Henley and Fry, all those solo records that went to the top of the charts, and then I found the Timothy B. Schmidt and the Randy Meisner ones, and eventually found out that Randy and Tim came from Poco, and finally got around to picking up some Poco, and it was the first Poco album, Picking Up the Pieces. And when I put that in and listened to it for the first time, I was like, oh my goodness, this is phenomenal music. So I learned everything I could about Poco and found out, my goodness, they've had a variety of different lineups, different people, different styles. I think the second Poco record I got was Legacy. And I'm like, wow. Both Poco and Picking Up the Pieces and Poco Legacy are very good records, but they're very different. Eventually I got everything in the middle. Particularly fond of, I guess, the earlier, I guess we'll call it the Ritchie era of Poco. Probably has always been my favorite. I love the Fab Four after Ritchie left. And I love a lot of the Cotton Young stuff. And so yeah, it wasn't until 2004 I finally found that there was a website and a chatting forum. So not only was I learning about Poco and listening to their music, I was engaging with fans of this band. People who had literally been around and hung out with Poco in the 60s in Los Angeles. And there were Poco fans from all over the world that were getting ready to go to Nashville for this big concert because Richie Furay, who had quit the band 30 years ago, was coming back for one night only to film a special DVD recording. So I picked a pretty darn good first Poco concert to go to. Belcourt Theater, Nashville, Tennessee, May 20th, 2004. And I met all the guys in the band. I met at least 15 to 20 Poco nuts, some from Nashville, some from Ohio, some from God knows where. There are people from all over the country, and me, the Canadian. And I loved it. It was awesome that the product that Rusty and Paul and Jack and George Grantham had put together, the live show, was amazing. So I couldn't wait to get back onto that website and scout out the tour dates and say, I want to see more of this stuff. So I think it was maybe a month later, Poco had booked 2 shows in Annapolis, Maryland, in this small club. And everyone's saying this is one of the coolest spots to see music. The acoustics in there are great. Get yourself a seat at the front table and you will be blown away. So I did. I made the 9-hour drive and took in both shows in Annapolis. A week later, I was in the front row at the Buffalo show at the Trelf. And this is where Rusty noticed me and said, I've seen you before, haven't I? And I'm like, yo, yes, I was at your shows in Annapolis. He's like, oh, really, Annapolis? And I said, yeah, Nashville. He's like, and Nashville. Then he had this funny look and said, Jack, I think we got ourselves a stalker here. So I had a new nickname that was probably the worst nickname I've ever had in my life. The Stalker. But in a good way. I was also probably the youngest. Most of these Poco fans were baby boomers, and here I was 30 years younger than them. And here I was from Canada, so I stuck out like a sore thumb. Here I am from a different country, a lot younger, but I'm making the effort to hit the road and travel. From there was on to the Wildwood in Steelville, Missouri, the famous Poco gigs. You gotta go to Steelville because these aren't your typical Poco shows where they play a 95-minute set list of the same 18 songs. This one is where they sit down for 3 to 4 hours every night and break out the acoustic instruments and play 30 to 40 songs, tons that they rarely play. And it really is like a homecoming type of affair where Poco nuts, again, travel from everywhere. So, my goodness, all the way to Missouri. I lived in Toronto, Ontario, so these were not short drives. All these trips for Poco concerts, except for Buffalo, we're talking 12-hour drives. Then I got the word that Richie Furay and Poco were going to do 3 shows together in California. I'm like, I don't know how many times Richie's going to be. I mean, Richie was, at that point of his life, already quasi-retired, only played a couple shows a year. And I'd also heard rumors about how great this venue in San Diego was called Humphreys that booked Poco and Richie Furay every year. And this time they had Richie and Chris Hillman out there. They had Jim Messina, and Poco was going to be out there as well. And there was a show booked at the Fillmore Auditorium up in San Francisco, excuse me. It's like, I'm going to make a little adventure of this. So I hit the road and stopped in all these different states that I'd never been to. What did I see? I saw Mount Rushmore, and I saw the Grand Canyon, and saw Badlands. And then I saw all these Poco concerts, and I got to meet all these people from, again, the websites. All of a sudden, you got one of the East Coast Poco fans coming out west and hanging out with all these West Coasters. My, oh my, what fun. So anyways, we did it all again next year, 2005. They booked a lot of those same venues, and back we went to Annapolis, Steelville, and there was another California swing. And 2006, I don't think I went east. I don't know how many times I went to Steelville. 4 years in a row for 2 or 3 nights apiece. Anyway, 2007, sadly, I had to move away from Toronto to a island very, very far north east of here. Still part of Canada, but it's like halfway from New York City to Iceland. You draw a line. We're way too far away from civilization. But between May 2004 and May 2007, I had been to 29 Poco concerts. In addition, I had seen Richie Furay play some solo shows, one which Rusty Young sat in, so I've technically seen Rusty 30 times in concert. And you spend that much time driving around, going to these shows, spending time with the fans, spending time with the band. They were very accessible to the fans. Now, before the shows, after the shows. I mean, that Nashville show, I remember, we were literally sitting we had a big table at a restaurant down the street, and Poco was in there with a big table, probably 20 people, and all these Poco nuts. We all just got in there and pushed all the tables together and had a huge dinner, and went into the Nashville theater, had the show, and really had a lot of fun just being a part of it. It's like a family. It's a second family. And very humble group of people. At least the ones that I got to know in the band. Rusty, Paul, Jack, George Grantham, and then George Lawrence. Yeah, the personnel continued to change, but I've continued to stay in touch with band members and some friends, and here we are. I guess we all have to realize that our number's going to get called one of these days, and we're losing all of these musicians, but so many of them died young, but Rusty, I think he generally took care of himself, and 75 years is a good long life, and he appeared happy and healthy right up to the end, and shocking actually. I just saw a video posted by Mary, his widow, showing Rusty getting up on stage with someone else singing, "I'm coming up on stage, I'm going to sing Crazy Love with your encore," and yeah, I know how much the Poco Nuts love this band and love the people in the band, so I want to say hi to all yous, if you remember me. I've kind of gone from stalker to stalkerette. That's a whole other story. Transitioning from male to female. Shortly after I moved away. So you'll all remember me as the stalker. But yeah, we can call me the stalkerette, I guess, now. But fond memories, and a special shout out to Rusty's family and friends. And yes, this is hitting me hard. I think it's hitting us all hard. It still hasn't quite sunk in yet. And I don't know, I want to try to make a list of all these concerts and tell some more stories. There's got to be pictures. I'm an archivist. My sleeping meds are really kicking in. Archivist. I like to archive things. I take thousands of pictures at concerts, and most people take 10 pictures. And shh, we do have some bootleg recordings. I think it's the worst kept secret. The Poco Nuts have been tape trading since the beginning of tapes. When did they invent tapes? In the 60s or 70s? A lot of Poco concerts have been recorded by fans. And I know I've got some that probably have not circulated. And the songs are always similar, but there's always little things like the banter. Rusty told these jokes, and I want to make sure the fans who never got to hear the pirate joke, for example, will get that opportunity. And well, this will be the first of probably many videos I film talking about those amazing 30 trips to see Rusty Young play music. So we'll sign off for now, and stay tuned, folks.